Hello, my name is Paul Stewart and my journey around Australia continues, checking out unique aircraft. And today I'm at Port Macquarie Airport, where I'm going to be flying to Brisbane with Alliance in a Fokker 70. And now they only ever made 47 of these aircraft because the manufacturer went bankrupt. But I understand it's actually otherwise a pretty good aircraft. But first, let me show you around their brand new terminal. The $10 million upgrade to the airport was only completed last month, and it's really impressive. Here's the check-in area, which I skipped as I had already printed off my boarding pass at home and I trundled onto security, which was pretty painless. Airside, you're immediately at the departure gate and there's plenty of chairs, and there's also free Wi-Fi, although PowerPoints were sparse. For the size of the airport, there was a reasonably sized cafe, as well as the usual airport bits and bobs, including these Model 747s, although I contained myself to only buy a cup of coffee. After a bit of a wait, our aircraft arrived. This particular Fokker 70 was built in 1996 and is painted in the 100 years First England to Australia aerial flight livery, which, as you can imagine, celebrates the 100th anniversary of the first flight between the two countries. In 1919, the Australian government offered £10,000, and these four guys spent 135 hours in the air over 27 days in a modified Vickers-Vimy bomber, which is now on display at Adelaide Airport. It's amazing to consider that technology has progressed to the stage now where an aircraft can fly between the two nations daily to Perth, and in a few years they'll be flying non-stop to the east coast, probably in Airbus A350-1000s. And back to our aircraft type, the F-70. As well as having an awkward name for the English-speaking world, Fokker has an incredibly rich history reaching back to World War I. The Red Baron flew one of these, as did Charles Kingsford Smith when he crossed the Pacific Ocean in the Southern Cross. Even the Dutch King flew in the F-70 as a KLM first officer for 21 years, although that was all kept secret until recently. And Fokker also assembled F-16 fighter jets under license from General Dynamic. Wikipedia's page on the company was a fascinating read. Anyway, inside the seats are all in a 2-3 layout, and they're reasonably old seats, which means that they're actually quite wide. I didn't have a ruler with me, but they did seem very wide, and I thought we're all pretty comfy. I sat down towards the back, mostly because I wanted to get a view of the engines, although just be careful not to sit in the last two rows, as the view is either blocked by the engine or there is no window at all. Just briefly, here's my seat, beginning with the overhead air vent, which is useful if you like a steady flow of air running through what's left of your hair, and in front is the table and storage pocket. The armrests seem unnecessarily wide, which I suspect shows how old they are, and there's this pretty cool view out of the window of the Rolls-Royce turbofan and the wing. I had that awesome realization when the door closed and the seats next to you are still empty, and we taxied out. Obviously, if you're not a huge fan of engine noises, sit as far forward as possible, although I personally didn't mind it. The wings flaps extended a little to increase lift, and we headed to the main runway. Port Macquarie can put on a fantastic display when you take off to the north, although obviously not today because of the smoke and limited view due to the wing and engine. Check out my Qantas Dash 8 videos for better views of Port Mac, and I'll include a link to those below. Now let's get back to the history books and look at the F-70, which is essentially just a stretched F-100. In the post-war period, Fokker built the successful turboprop F-27 Friendship and the jet-powered F-28 Fellowship, and by the 1980s it was time to replace them. They started developing two new aircraft, the turboprop F-50 and then the jet F-100. But as always happens in aviation, the programs were far more expensive than anticipated. The F-100 was launched in 1986 and was initially quite successful, so they committed to the shorter F-70, which is what I flew in today. They were bailed out by the Dutch government in the late 1980s, and the F-70 was launched in 1993, although by that time the financial problems were well established, and there were now more competitors. After only 47 of the F-70s were built, their relationship with parent company Daimler-Benz fell through as they decided to concentrate on cars, and Fokker went bankrupt. The F-70 is considered to be a sturdy aircraft, and around half of those 47 remain flying today. Alliance, the airline who run today's aircraft on behalf of Virgin Australia, have 11 of them, and they're actually the biggest operator in the world. There was talk at one stage of the production line being restarted for the F-70 and 100, although that's fallen through, probably in part because there's now more competition, even from the likes of Bombardier. After we reached a steady cruising altitude of around 8,500 meters and flying at 800 kilometers an hour, a small snack of a turkey and cranberry sandwich was offered, which was fine for a 44-minute flight. Otherwise, I just sat back and enjoyed the view as we flew along the coastline, and I think below me now is the town of Yamba. We flew directly over the Gold Coast, so those sitting on the left would have got a great view of surfers paradise, and flew just south of Stradbroke Island, which you should be able to see now in the distance. The approach into Brisbane was ab-geek heaven, with mostly clear skies, but a few clouds just to keep it interesting, and the constant fiddling with the throttle was music to my ears. I will edit through parts of the landing as it goes on for a while, and I wanted to show you more footage at the airport, although I'll upload the full unedited landing in a separate video and a link to that below. From the perspective of reviewing the flight, look, it was fun. The seats were comfy and the crew were friendly. As I mentioned before, it's fairly noisy at the rear of the aircraft, so if that's an issue, sit further forward. But otherwise, these jets are always going to be quieter overall and smoother than the turboprops that also fly on this route. An interesting design feature of this aircraft are the air brakes that extend out at the tail, which you can just make out on this F-70 arriving into Brisbane that I inadvertently captured while gawking at this 747. They kind of remind me of the air brakes on the F-86 Sabre or the BAE 146. We deplaned the aircraft in Brisbane via the apron, which is always fun for an ab geek, and here's one last glimpse at our aircraft in this unique livery. There were heaps of F-70s and 100s at Brisbane, and this particular F-70 here is painted pink to raise awareness for the Breast Cancer Network Australia, and then here's the standard Alliance livery on this longer F-100. And finally, if you enjoyed my video, please give it a thumbs up and check out my channel for many more aviation videos from around Australia and the world. Thanks for watching.